It's like he don't know how to stop himself sometimes. Listen to your uncle, man. Hey, everyone. How y'all doing, man? Hope everything else is well. Hope everybody's been good. You're now tuned in live to Super Heru Radio. I'm your host, Aseer Radio-Aseer. Peace to everybody. Peace to everybody in the chat room. Peace to everybody that's listening. Peace to everybody that supports the show. Peace to everybody that don't. Again, I am your host, Heru, along with my co-host and leader, the Empress of 10,000 Years, as well as you, Amor, who I want to say peace to. Happy birthday. You know what I'm saying? And definitely, you know, I really appreciate everybody coming through and the support, especially being that this is our last broadcast from New York. We're leaving very shortly. So we definitely want to say peace. And thank you to those people who came out to all of the events that we had celebrating the release of my first comic book novel, 575-page, The Dark Skull 418, the world's most dangerous comic book novel. And I really appreciate everybody that came out to Forbidden Planet, to the Bulletproof, to the Barnes & Noble's joint, to the album release party. Big up to people like Black Dot who came through. Big up to, you know what I'm saying, all of the original, beautiful, original people. Y'all know who you are, who hold us down, support. Also, big up to everybody that came to the lectures that we had yesterday and Sunday and Saturday, entitled Cloaks and Daggers, How to Protect Oneself from the Rise of Black Luciferians and Subtle Satanists. So we definitely wanted to big up also Siri Rishi, who allowed us to do the lectures in her beautiful yoga studio. And again, thank you, Creator, for allowing my son to, again, see another year, being that he just turned 4 on the 3rd. And blessings to anyone who may have lost loved ones between now and then. You know what I'm saying? We definitely want to send you our prayers and condolences. And you know how we do, man. We keep it all the way 100. So for those people who are interested in our online classes coming up, we're going to get that back online. We're going to be starting, I believe, this Wednesday. You know what I'm saying? We're going to get back to MIAO and just hit the ground running. So, again, thank you guys for coming through and supporting. So, here we are again. Another mass shooting, right? Another mass death and all of that. We definitely want to say peace to everyone who lost their life in that. And I find it very interesting and funny that one of the parts in the lecture, we were talking yesterday, we were talking about the connection between the white Sabis, or whatever we would say, the white Sikhs, from what was then Hindustan to probably, yeah. Okay. I can do this. So it just, with all of that, we definitely want to say peace and condolences to all of those people who lost their life. Regardless of whether I agree with the whole casteism and Hinduism or not, it doesn't excuse the fact that people are out here basically terrorizing and creating mass death rituals to get different people involved. And because, like I said, as a 9/11 ritual, this is all connected to the same aspect. You know what I mean? The other aspect that we find kind of simultaneously is the fact that again, just like in the mass shooting in the Batman situation, there's reports of multiple shooters. Just like with the Kennedy situation, there's report of multiple shooters. Just like in the Virginia Tech situation, they always report multiple shooters, but they always want to give you a lone gunman. Now, the lone gunman theory is always given to you as a means to satiate the public's need to have somebody pay for the murder. in my opinion, and in researching it, and then also kind of doing the knowledge to the coincidence of what we were talking about in the lecture last night, I'm starting to see that there's a very deep, penetrating aspect where you have a lot of different individuals that are being triggered specifically for the sake of promoting mass hysteria. We've now gotten past the whole point of, people trying to incite people or trigger people to do things. Now we're walking into the phase of people actually triggering mass anarchy. Now the question is, why would they target the Sikhs all of a sudden? That's a good question. One that I'm still trying to do the knowledge to. But I'm also doing a nod to the fact that the community of Sikhs in that section of Wisconsin is very, very big. And recently they had elections where a couple of different members of the Sikh community started applying to the business of, public official. And I believe that one of them was a very big vocal, I forget the guy's name, but he was a very big vocal opponent of the practices of what he coined racial profiling amongst people of the Southeast Asian descent. Because for whatever reason, it's a lot of different people from Southeast Asia out there. So in coincidence of that, I think right before they were supposed to have this election, whatever, this is when this whole shooting goes down, and this white man who tattoos 9/11 on him starts running up in the spot trying to buck everybody down. But like I said, at the same purpose, what's the motive? And why is it that all the initial reports that first came out of the actual ritual sacrifice or whatever started with this essence or this backtracking of the media basically going from more than one shooter just to one shooter. For there to be so many killings like this and for always just to be one person doing it, this is to isolate whatever governmental or non-governmental or society or whatever's involvement in this whole actual ritual. But as I said on last week's show and the show before that this thing is going to continue to pick up speed because the idea is that they need to get as many people getting guns. See, that's the other thing. Some people basically feel like this is a means for them to try to promote and get rid of guns, citizens in America holding guns altogether. That this is basically like a ruse to get everybody so caught up and so scared of actually having their own guns that they ban guns publicly. But see, they can never do that because the right to bear arms is so fundamentally in and intrinsically in the psyche of not just the American populace, but specifically of the white man. You understand? You cannot tell this white man that you can't have no guns. Are you crazy? Even though there's these white people and these white males who are out here and, you know what I mean, stacking up guns and stockpiling and all of that, you know what I'm saying? They are still not trying to give none of that up. And part of the reason why they can't really pop off this pseudo-New World Order shit is just because of that main fact, is the fact that they can't really account for how many guns are actually rampant within the United States. Another backlash, what they're not reporting to you or not reporting publicly to people dealing with this whole Eric Holder Fast and Furious situation, is that most of the guns that they were taking off the streets were guns that were already taken and confiscated from different people in the hood. And therefore, a lot of these guns have been recycled and put back into circulation and were actually being taken and sold back to people in Mexico, and then people in Mexico would then take them and sell them to people in L.A., and then people would sell it to different people who's coming in and back and forth. So you have this thing where you have all of these guns with mad different bodies on them that are attributed to mad different cases, but none of these cases now can be resolved just due to the fact that the serial numbers and the things that's attached to the guns, as well as the burning number, bullet casings and rounds and stuff like that, all of those things have been mixed and matched. So what this is also doing is that it's creating a backlash and over backlog of cases that really can't be solved anymore. But instead of the crackers coming out and saying, when I say crackers, I'm not talking specifically about Caucasian people. I'm talking about anyone who's there to crack the unity amongst the world populace. That's usually people in uniforms. I don't know if you noticed, but I have. But anyway, what this has done is it's created such a backlog of cases that none of these cases could actually get resolved. So what is now happening is that you have more and more quote-unquote prisoners in jail now that are languishing out because they have no real means to be acquitted. But at the same time this is going on, the guns have not been taken out of circulation. They've been put back into it. Therefore, these guns are contributing more and more to different murders, not only in the United States, but murders all over the so-called Western Hemisphere. You understand? Which, again, is now creating enough of a backlash where certain government officials are now trying to bring sanctions against gun companies, right, for not necessarily regulating what their industry and who buys their guns and things like that. But see, the thing is, the Congress cannot make any laws, and the president cannot make any laws to ban guns altogether. Because, again, if you think these white people are going to give up their guns just because a bunch of Indian people got shot, you got a wrong thing. You got another thing coming. If you think these white people are going to give up their guns because a bunch of people got shot up in the movie theater, you got another thing coming. You understand? The NRA has over 24 million members. You understand? So because there was this whole full moon, or let's say blood moon, or let's say sanguine moon, you got to understand that as we are in the second month of Jason, this thing has to continue. So the funny thing is, the same night that we was doing our book signing in Forbidden Planet was the same night that they sacrificed Sylvester Stallone's son. But I find it interesting that his son died right before his next new movie is supposed to be coming out. And sometimes we have to do the knowledge to the timing of some of these deaths, man. You know what I'm saying? And who benefits from them? Now, I'm not saying Sylvester Stallone sacrificed his own son, but I'm not saying that that's not so far out of the realm of possibility that cannot happen. So what you got to start to do the knowledge again is the fact that when we get down to it, that a lot of these satanic rituals that are going on are being perpetuated by members of the same orders, meaning that people who are satanic themselves are starting to sacrifice themselves to the different warring factions of satanic orders that are at war, or I would say at odds with each other right now. Case in point, things have gotten so, like I said, critical with these people is the fact that now they're trying to figure out, like I said, legislation where they can actually try to amend or repeal whole aspects of the Constitution itself. Now, the Constitution is not my Constitution. It's not something that I use to identify myself with by any means. However, it is still being used by certain members of not only our community, but other members of the community. And the greater so-called United States constitutionalists and people like that. You know what I'm saying? So essentially what goes down, or what is happening, is you're seeing a underlying conflict brewing between members of what we would consider, let's say, the establishment and different aspects of law enforcement itself. We saw this in the movie The Dark Knight, which itself was a ritual, but in the fact that the way that Bane was able to take everything over was basically immobilizing the police and playing upon the police's arrogance. Allowed him to get them in a position where he entombed them. Them being locked in the underground, for those people who didn't know, he tricked them into going into the sewers or whatever, and then blew the entranceways so that way they couldn't get out. And in that, they were locked down there for months. But see, he was still merciful to a degree because he was still giving them food. So what, again, this means, again, allegorically speaking, symbolically speaking, is that there is a faction within the law enforcement or government itself that is basically against the government or law enforcement itself, which then creates which then creates a schism amongst individual people in terms of what their true purpose for, like I said, law enforcement or anything else really is. So this don't mean that everybody who is a police officer or in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or whatever is a total Luciferian or somebody that's there to destroy or whatever. But you have to keep it real that you can't act like if you go to something like that and you join up with something like that, you can't be so naive to think that you are not there to, in a sense, enforce the law more than you enforcing the peace. And because the devil has no peace in his world and in his society, what he has to do is perpetually throw your peace of mind off by creating heinous situations like this for us to dwell on. But what I wanted to say on Superhero Radio tonight is that the end is not yet. One thing you have to remember, regardless of what is going on in the hood, regardless of what it is we breaking down in this whole thing, in terms of the decoding and the secret messages and all this other type of shit that's going on, if you didn't want to experience this, then you wouldn't have incarnated as a physical being. Therefore, there's an aspect of you that incarnated into this imperfection to figure out different aspects or deeper aspects of you that you can then take back to the divine source, which then can trickle back down in a form of understanding where people don't have to experience things like this anymore. The other thing we have to understand is that the present government is totally satanic. We talked about this in the lecture, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it in the sense of when I talk about, the Nazism and all this stuff that's going on in government or whatever, I'm not talking about it from the perspective, what's up, right? I'm not talking about it from the perspective of people hating and shutting themselves down. What up, GLD? What's up, Father? Father Sod in the house.
Gotta double that up. You know
what
I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying? That's what's up. Thanks, King. Thanks for coming through, my dude. Good looking, man. It's tight, right? I got another one for you if you want. The other one I got. Nah, but to keep it real, regards to what everybody said, peace, man. Raphael said peace. We're now at the stage where when I talk about these people, I'm not talking about this from the perspective of some sort of fear or some sort of like destructive energy that's not there. I'm talking about it from the perspective of us coming into the awareness of the fact that there is nowhere else for these people that you consider the people who are or who have been in control of the nefarious things, and that this is nothing, there's nowhere else for them to go. Think about it. You've been building on your ancestry, you've been building on the knowledge of your culture and the wisdom of your ancestors and things like that for a long time. But at the same token, from the same perspective, he can bathe him, I said, that's up and have to bathe him. This is coming from a perspective where people are starting to realize that, or at least, when I start to talk about these people, I'm not talking about these people from the traditional perspective of, the Illuminati is doing this, or, the white man is going to come and basically put you all in camps and all this other shit. Like, I'm not even there with it, man. If you notice, I don't even get into all of that Rex 84 FEMA shit. Like, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real things that happened that laid the groundwork for the people who are satanically sucking the blood of everybody on the planet to be in a position to do what they did. And those people, unfortunately, or fortunately for them or whatever, happen to be of the or persuasion. Nazism, like I said, is just an aspect of what they perceive as white supremacy. But again, that white supremacy thing is all based on the myth of the Aryan. And we all know that Blavatsky and them made that up. But the question is, where did this aspect of the game come into opinion? What was the organization that allowed these people to come into the government in the first place and set shit off the way that they did? Well, for historic purposes, we want to be accurate. We don't want to just be right. We want to be correct. So, the research that I did, the aspect of the game or the people who got brought into the game after Operation Paperclip and Operation Mongoose popped off, they came in through what they call the Vatican rat lines. The Vatican rat lines were the organizational lines that were created after the Concordant, an agreement called the Concordant, was set into motion. You can go online and research the Concordant between the Catholic Church and the Nazi Party. That Concordant had with it certain aspects of rights and privileges that they were to receive in due process of coming into being, meaning leaving the actual, let's say, Nazi Party or whatever, and then going underground with it and finding a way to influx themselves into traditional society, while at the same time incorporating the values and mores of the Nazi ideology, which is death to everybody else that's not white. So what they did was, after the Vatican rat lines brought them to places like Brazil and Argentina and Bolivia and Honduras, which we're going to get into too, we have to get into the fact that in order to bring them up here, the ones that went to Brazil and all of that first were the initial scientists that were able to get out. Because the Russians were fighting the United States who was going to get with scientists, the United States basically hooked up with aspects of the Vatican, who had already agreed with the Nazi ideology based upon the fact that they were all, you know what I mean, that the Nazis or Hitler or whatever himself was allegedly a Catholic. So in the process of that, deals were made to bring them up into the United States government. So an organization had to be created to do that. The OSS could not necessarily do that because the OSS was the Operation of Strategic Services. The OSS could not do this because their mandate was basically a precursor to CIA as an intelligence arm of the Army, of the United States, that was basically kind of like only mandated to work in foreign capacity. Meaning that the OSS and all intelligence that was done up until the end of the war was mandated to only be done to people who were not citizens of the United States or members of the American Republic or 14th Amendment citizens. So in order for them to do that, they had to basically scrap that mandate because technically that would be seen as treason by anybody who was participating in the democracy, in the changeover from the republic to the democracy aspect of the United States. So based on that, it's right here. So based on that, they've created a situation where people started to preserve the idea of creating a separate state within the United States, one that would be corporate, that one whose ideology would be corporate-based and would be soulless in the concept of the fascist nihilism, the fascist nihilistic mind state of the Nazi Party itself. So, again, OSS couldn't do it, FBI couldn't do it, and they had to do it in a way where the FBI and these other places would not be alerted to this happening until it was already done. So there was a guy named Jack Parsons who also happened to be a Satanist. He's known as the Antichrist in certain writings, who at the time after the war was really heavy into jet propulsion. and he used a mixture of scientific alchemy, which is the science of science and magic, to create a organization that would be then known as the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the JPL. But the JPL funding, once Parsons came on, started to come directly from the Pentagon. Now, whether we know it or not, or you know it or not, all satanic ritual and stuff like that, well, let me not say all, most satanic ritual that is sanctioned by government comes out of the Pentagon, because the Pentagon is the middle space in between the five-pointed star. What we know is a five-pointed star, they call a pentagram. The difference being that the pentagram always has to have the circle around it, because the satanic intent of the quote-unquote dark magic that they're trying to use has to be sealed in. And the circle acts as a binding agent to keep the satanic aspect of the pentagram contained. So with Parsons, they basically knew that they could create a way into the rocket game. And then this is when basically after he allegedly died in an explosion, which was probably a hit or a satanic ritual where he may have committed a ritual suicide. Either way, from that came NASA, the National Aeronautic Space Agency. And it had to be people who knew how to build rockets. But at the time, rocket propulsion was only maybe about rocket studies and how to do stuff like that. It's only maybe been 20 years old. It was revolutionized by Parsons, you know what I'm saying? And after he was gone, they were still trying to kind of like figure out some of the stuff he was doing. So, of course, they needed greater help. So there was something that Eisenhower created called Magic 12 or Majestic 12. Majestic 12 basically created the interface between the government as well as the mandates. One mandate was to find a way to integrate this new technology and the people that was bringing it, and another mandate was to use aspects of that technology to turn into black operations. Black operations are any operations that are initiated by a government to wage intelligence wars against its own people, specifically the darker-skinned people of whatever country they're in. Because the indigenous people of any given place are the people who technically are the oldest in the land. Therefore, they're supposed to have the most respect. So MJ-12 started bringing Von Braun and a bunch of these Nazis in, and as he brought them all in and started to essentially effectuate their involvement in the establishment of NASA as a power, they began to use that influence to trickle up a lot of the bread. And a lot of the old money that they had seized from the war, you know what I mean, or was seized from them from the war, they found ways to get back because, again, they still had the ties with the Jesuits in the Catholic Church based upon the Treaty of the Concordant. And then now through Magic 12 or MJ-12, they're able now to have basically autonomy to be able, so long as they produce greater technology for the United States. So what essentially that did was create a huge gap in the intelligence apparatus of the United States itself, because they had no way to watch these dudes. So when a guy named Wild Bill Donovan and Alan Dulles and his brother basically just went to the president of the time and said that they need to have a domestic agency that would deal with intelligence against the American people, which again was treason. So this was the first establishment of CIA that was then spearheaded by people like George Shurf Jr. All of the psychological and black operations that started from that point, then again, that had to be people with a certain ideal, a certain type of mentality. So they decided to recruit everybody from there, from Yale, specifically from the Society of Skull and Bones. They said it was an old saying that if a person couldn't find work, if a bonesman couldn't find work after working, you know what I'm saying, or being out there after graduation, he could always get a job at CIA. So essentially, this became a modernized version of the OSS. But the difference being now it was totally turned inward against the people itself. The number one threat to all of that then was now that these MJ-12 Nazis was in all of these different government organizations. They didn't just bring, they brought over 170,000. And of that, maybe about 10,000 high-ranking members, niggas who was really down with it, people in the Black Sun, people in the Thule, people in the Ugrin movement. And so based on all of this, while all of this is happening, we are at a sore disadvantage because in 1956, the last consul that represented the different United States, such as the United States of Morocco, the United States of America, the United States of Turkey, the United States of Siam, the United States of what was then Persia, the United States of Kemet, which was Egypt, as well as the surrounding territories of what we call the West Indies, as well as the different islands around the other European and African continents. All of that ceased. So there was a window where we could go either way. We could go back to the nationality that already existed, that was already there for us as indigenous people, not only just indigenous aspects of Moorish culture, but indigenous aspects of any so-called black or brown culture that existed in the planet. This was a time where everybody who existed in those places could basically reinstate themselves. But due to the 150 years prior to this moment of the destabilization and the forced amnesia, or the forced brainwashing of people from their indigenous cultures, they really didn't know. So something had to be created for these original people to fall into that would now fall in line to the Nazi ideologies that had already started to be established. We're talking about the years between 1945 and 1965, or I should say 1956. So by 1956, the window is open for us to either go back to some real national character, Steve, or something else had to be presented. So through the black operations and everything else, something that we today would call civil rights had to be initiated and instigated into the black community. But it had already had its underpinnings in that due to the fact that everybody had to follow what was happening to black people who were being terrorized by aspects of the Ku Klux Klan and things like that. Terrorist organizations, again, to set up a mode of thinking within people to turn themselves against themselves. So, again, civil rights had to be initiated, and that became the new thing. So instead of dealing with an indigenous nationality, you start dealing with a United States-specific nationality. And then from the civil rights, you get integration, in which now we, by our own mouths, choose to be equal with the same quote-unquote Nazis, knowing that their system is not based on equality. See, the Constitution of any government can work for the indigenous people if given a chance and if indigenous people know how and what tenets and which way to use it. Because essentially it's all founded to preserve something that we'll call justice, which is essentially ma'at. So the original intent of what our ancestors and all that did is still there. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes that instinct. Ricky's calling me. Ricky's calling me. Ricky. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes this as a instant, so as a constant in terms of how to perceive or lack of perception. So essentially we're talking about the establishment of Nazism at the same time they're establishing Negroism as a political ideology for people to fall into. So all of that, like I said, becomes what it is. And then, like most passive people, they start to be inclined to follow behind ideologies that really don't belong to them, moving further away from their original position and moving further into the clutches or descending further into the clutches of this new system that's being created. So from then, they nominated that the number one threat to everything is just guns, is the fact that in America everybody can get a gun. So from that period to now, they've been striving to set up a perception in self and in people that would produce the Negro mentality that would then also get people, Negroes and other people who are not, other oppressed people, other conquered people, to then actually find solace in their conqueror, to then join up with them to then go and conquer other people. This is ingrained in the present psyche of most indigenous or quote-unquote conscious people, whether they realize it or not. And that is the doorway to the satanic influence in the form of these quote-unquote Nazis using this Sut-Ut-An energy in an inverted tip. So when we strive to do things like them, we can get aspects of those things, but we also get the negative aspects of those things. So when they told original women that it was more important for them to get money than to be home, then it became more about finding somebody else to look for their children, look after their children while they was at work. Whereas in the generations before that, it was the man who went to work and it was the woman who traditionally was home. Yet they created another black operation called feminism, which was a bastardized version of Nazism, to then influence women, specifically white women, who, keep it real, were always put on a pedestal, but then always idealized and used as the symbol of what other people should be like and do. So the more it became this exchange of non-reliable communities, the more these communities began to break them down. The more other communities began to break them down because, again, we're talking about whenever we had something that was ours, like, let's say, Black Wall Street, was bombed out. Let's say Black Harlem, that was heroned out, for a long time. And, again, we don't do any of the important. By the time people like Frank Lucas and these people was coming in, the drug business was well $1 billion, $100 billion industry because the United States, again, was involved. They was allowing these packages to be brought in through the dead bodies. That was a ritual itself, bringing cocaine with dead bodies because, they won't one, show them on TV because they don't want to ever show the American populace how many of their young men and women are being maimed and murdered and killed in these useless wars. They also don't want to publicize that and have that on, so they don't really go and inspect the corpus, or didn't back then. So the aspect of doing that has CIA all on it. This that ritual of doing that, CIA all over that. But CIA all over that is MJ-12 all over that. But what happened was MJ-12 was dissolved, and the Nazis like von Braun and Werner and Reich and Eckhart and these rest of these devils, they basically was integrated into other aspects of upper society and then started to form companies or buy into companies, things like Microsoft, things like Silicon Valley. Where do you think the money came from all of that? Through Bill Gates' pops to these people, who, again, second, third generation Nazis. Remember, his father or mother was the one who created Planned Parenthood. So we're talking about a universal disruption of people's owning of themselves based upon a radicalized notion of false ideology that we will refer to as Aryanism or so-called white supremacy, that would then have to juxtapose and create something called black supremacy just to create some sort of balance. You see what I'm saying? So we already know that black is so us, by the fact that we are black and still alive, means that we are black supremacists, you understand? Because we're supreme, because we're the ones that's still here putting in the work to make sure other people know that there's another reality or other realities other than this. So what the devil is now doing is trying to create different and tap into different realities through creating imagery and stories of alternate realities to get you to focus on the possibilities of them being real, and them through the organ harvesting energies of the movie theaters and the screens and all of that, they begin to harness and actually are then blessed with the possibility or the technology or impetus of the technology to do it. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, this is what it really is. This is what it boils down to. So what we got to do is focus on not getting caught up or interrelated to the horrific aspects and the traumatic aspects specifically of our present situation, and start to deduce ways to move past that and into a greater sphere of thinking where, like in chess, you start to think 5 moves ahead, 5, 6 moves ahead. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a definite time in our reality where we have the ability to mold it how it is we want and create what it is we want to create and see things how it is we want to see them. You know what I'm saying? The only way to, okay, I got it. So this is what it becomes as we look forward to this quote-unquote New Year, December 21st. Why are you crying? I know that you don't have one in the
Yes, Daddy.
Watch TV. Yeah, so come and watch it. Sorry, guys. Being here. Great, that's your bath. Go in here, and when mommy comes back, we're finished. So with all that being said, these operations had to be turned up a notch, because once we started to participate in the civil rights situation, then a whole reality was created to facilitate that. And then they extrapolated, or the idea was to extrapolate who else could benefit from those type of things, from that specific organization. So the spearhead image of that person was Michael Luther King, a.k.a. Martin Luther King. Yet he was based on a prior version called Gandhi. Okay, and Gandhi, who himself was an esquire, whom himself was a Sikh, whom himself was a casteist, meaning that he was a believer in the caste system that degregates and dejects the darker-skinned Hindu, Kushian, Dravidian, quote-unquote, Southeast Asian Indian people, calling them Dalits, which means, dust people, basically. They would treat these black people so bad that they would tie brooms to the back of they would tie brooms to the back of their belts, so that way when they walk, their footprints would be wiped away. This is how deep they went in on the dark-skinned Indian people and the light-skinned Indian people and all of that. And that was, again, exacerbated after the quote-unquote white Savis, a.k.a. the captains of the British India Company, came over there and altered a lot of the original Dravidian Hindu texts. So when they renamed the place India, what you have to understand is they renamed the history of what at that time was Hindustan. You understand? So once the people went from being the lighter-skinned people at the time, the people like you would call, like the lighter skinned Indian people, I guess if you call, they would be known as Hindus, while the darker skinned ones were called Dravidians. You see, and because the darker skinned ones were at the bottom of the caste, they had to be subjected to whatever the caste was employed for them to do, and it was usually in some sort of exploitive aspect of this is how it be. This is what it is. I'm like, this ring is bell. So, this ultimately, I'll go look back at the house. Awesome, man. It's a car. Yeah. So, after the Dravidian situation was set up and the Hindu caste system was exploited, it was, again, based on color. So, of course, the darker skinned people start preying upon themselves just watch your TV anymore. They start preying upon themselves and fighting for themselves because they don't exist in a country or a place where they are seen as human beings. They're seen as something less than that because of the color of their skin. The same thing is going on, or while that is happening in quote-unquote India, and Gandhi is then brought in to kind of like be the bag man to kind of hold it down. But remember, this dude is an esquire. He's a lawyer, He's a supporter of the caste up until that point and supported it even after. You know what I'm saying? So you got to understand, people, you talk about a culture where when the girls were born, you had a son already, they would and there was a flood, you would save your son before you save your daughter. That was a whole system that really didn't exist until after the exploitation of that, to the point where the original members of the Dravidian caste, basically who were devout Kali worshippers, created an organization just like the Ku Klux Klan to basically protect themselves as well as ritually sacrifice the white Saudis specifically for the mind control as well as the altering of their ancient principles through a cult called the Thuggee, where we get the term thug from. So, again, history imitates art, and art imitates history. Tupac comes, coins thug life, and, again, brings about a whole new perspective of what a thug is, right? But the underlying aspect of the initial word still exists, and the connection then to Kali still exists. Kali being Medusa in certain books, as well as Calypso in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, as well as the Hydra, because all images of powerful women are seen as threats by whatever patriarchal priesthood is dominating the public psyche up to that time. So, again, we have to remember that it's a perceived or antiquated notion to say that just because somebody is melanated or whatever, that they're going to have a certain degree of consciousness the way you or anybody is. Because, again, we to this day fall on either side of whether or not you was down with the whole Yakubian thing or the whole black exploitation thing or the whole, Boule thing or whatever, and then whether or not you wasn't. And sometimes the schisms that happen in people's families and relationships, especially after a child is born, is usually based upon the fact that these ancient pacts and these ancient disagreements were never really resolved. However, by the time you usually realize that this may be the impetus of what's going on in your individual situation, it's usually when you get knowledge of yourself, but by that time, you have probably gone through it in whatever negative capacity you went through. You see what I'm saying? which again all creates a different altered view or sub-altered view of yourself and what you perceive as the reality itself. So, historically speaking, as what I'm talking about or delivering you tonight is not just, let's say, a history lesson, it's an allegory to our present situation, because the situations that came from this have never truly been resolved. And the people who are continuing this have never been punished. And due to the unification now of this pseudo-black, Luciferian, everything is cool, you could just do anything, you know what I mean? That's true, but at the same time, we are still civilized beings. Therefore, we still have to create a civilization that will propel us into the future, that is not based on decadent behavior and the acquisition of power through feudal and bloodletting or oaths or things like this, because these things people have been doing for the past 6,000 years, and look at where it has gotten everybody. So at the time of 1956, before the closing of the Grand Council and all of that, there was black leaders and quote-unquote African, Pan-Africanist leaders of, 1956. There were people who were conscious of that. But because most black people who were injected into the populace for us to pay attention to were agents against us, we lost sight of what it is we could have had. Because all civilization started in the South, everything had to start in the South. So the first subjugation of what they call the defense of the Union was really the Union of white supremacy, or the white supremacist Union that was going on in apartheid, South Africa at the same time, as well as in France or whatever at the same time, moving in on the indigenous nobility, finding ways to breed into the family, kidnap, ransom, burning at the stake, all of this. But all of this is what they refer to as the Spanish Inquisition. This is still a part of it. It's still going on. The funny thing, though, is that in at least the books that I've read, and I could be mistaken, in the books that I've read, it seems that the term Spain was coined after a certain period. Therefore, at the time that these so-called Moors, if Charles 1526 came out and said that Spanish is going to be replaced with Moorish, then that means that at the time that he was a quote-unquote Spanish king, he was not called that, or could not have been called that, because that's not what was recognized at the time. So really we're talking about Moriscos. We're talking about Castile and Aragon. We're talking about Moriscos. We're talking about little Moors, or what they call Mudejars, or Moors who dress in European habit. Us, basically. Just because you may wear fez every day and a turban every day or whatever doesn't make you more of a Moor than a Moor who may just wear a pin and regular clothes. That's what allowed us to maintain our society for so long, because we let people do that. But once the religified aspect and the demiurgical gods became the focus of moving societies forward or acquiring power over human minds through ideology, then it was more about, like I said, the continuance or the continual abatement of people's basic appetites, and then using the guilt that they feel from those to manipulate them and engender them into different groups that are really like support groups. And that's what most of these magical orders and things are, really. So these secret societies or whatever, they're really just big alcohol anonymous groups. They're just really of people who all support the same lie or who all support the same truth. And that's always going to be a part of human nature, so long as we're talking about humans in their pre-December 21st, 2012 form. I mean, So we already know that just because it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it don't mean that it's not a cyborg, you know what I mean? Or a clone, you know, or a graphic duck, because we live in the fulfillment of a Yakubian experiment that has now reached its zenith. And everybody is basically starting to wake up to their role in it, to their ancestral family role in it. You was either down with it or you wasn't. This is the war between the ancients and the moderns. We're talking about a genetic grand war that has been subtly going on between us, to the point where so bad or so much so that it evolved into the creation of a actual physical version of negation, to grab out of us what was supposed to be not supposed to be there. So to make a physical aspect or a physical version of us, if you subscribe to the Yakubian thing as being true, then what you're also doing in knowledge too is that the signs of tricks and lies and everything that went with that was an aspect or a means of survival. It was a survival mechanism taught to a people who had always been preyed upon, because technically they did not exist because they had no name. Technically they can't even be Caucasians, because a Caucasus is a group of people, and an Asian is you know, an Asian or Southeast Asian or Asiatic. They're not any of those. They have just taken somebody else's designation. So technically by that term, again, a Sikh or a Sabi or a Indian person, Hindu person is technically really a Caucasian, if we're really keeping it real. Or a person from Eurasia, the Caucasus Mountains of Eurasia. Either way, when something has no real name, it doesn't exist. That's why they're so obsessed with knowing and giving you a name and giving you something to function on and through as a portal for them to be able to dictate how it is you live your life. But again, this is not just quote-unquote Caucasian people anymore. And then when we talk about quote-unquote white supremacy, we're not talking about, you know, white people alone enforcing that. I mean, look at the guy who's sitting in the Oval Office right now. You know what I mean? This dude's killed mad people, you know, but he could get a Nobel Peace Prize. Cool, but so could, you know, Martin King and Gandhi. Again, both of them people was esquires. Martin Luther King was a Jesuit, you know what I'm saying, in service of the Pope. It doesn't mean he didn't do great things and inspire people to do great things. He inspired me at one point in my life. But I'm not so inspired that I will create an American idol of anyone or anything that lived before me, especially if I never spoke to them. Because I can only go by what I'm researching and what I'm doing in knowledge to, but also what I'm intuiting and feeling from this information about this person. I'm not just reading a book for the book's sake. But see, when you're a scholastic atheist or a quote-unquote conscious atheist, you know, these black people call themselves agnostics or atheists and things like that. They're just, you know, in a state of negation. You know what I mean? And it's good to negate aspects of third density because that allows you to be more perceived spiritual. However, you still incarnated and have a human experience. And when you lose sight of that, you get caught sleeping, you know, things can happen to you. So you got to be on point, man. So you can go to as many lectures and things as you want and do the knowledge and support who you want to support and do all of that. However, if the words is not matching up with the actions, then it is what it is. But if you still want to support it after that, then that says something more about you than who it is you're supporting. So some people always want the numbers. It all comes down to the numbers. But if you're building on numbers that's not coming through some sort of supreme mathematics, then you're just dealing with numbers. If you're not dealing with numbers coming from some sort of numerology or, you know what I'm saying, mystical aspect, then you're just taking it for what it is. All of these things play a part in our development as we move to a post-December 21st, 2012 world. And these events that I've been discussing with you guys tonight are basically just aspects or tenets that are overlooked and glossed over in general American history. So if you're in Yale or Princeton or Georgetown or whatever you in right now, or Spelman or whatever, and you're doing the knowledge to this, and you're like, oh, well, I didn't hear this in school or whatever, you're not going to hear it in there unless you bring me up there on some lecture tours so I can really put it down for y'all and y'all can really do the knowledge and then really press these people who's going to give you the false boule shit because they don't really want to let you know. And this is black and white people. Like, it's not about impressing people with what you know. It's not about any of that. It's about sharing what you know to those people who want to know it too. And then what they do with it is what they do with it. Yet I am still responsible for how this thing is conveyed. Therefore, I have to be conscious of my association and things like that, because if not, that is because that, again, is how a noble is supposed to conduct himself. Once you find out that a Moor or a black or Moor from another house lacks a certain aspect of character, then you know you can't really establish any real treaties with that house, because you'll always be betrayed. These are aspects of chevalier or chivalry that we don't really do the knowledge to as Moors, because we don't focus and follow that aspect of it. We don't even know what that is. We think of chivalry as opening doors for women. They got us flipping. It had nothing to do with that. It was a code of ethics for nobles that eventually became a code of ethics for gentlemen. Like I said, research the House of Burgess and the Universal Apprentice Hall for the Science of Law and Government, also known as the Hall of Justice. These places that these people inhabit now and act as federal agents, they are basically just tax agents, because any federal system is really a taxing agency for corporations that is there to assist in the aid of corporations phasing into living people. That's why we created a clear delineation between our national republic and the federal government itself. But again, once the people who helped establish these tenets began to then join up with the same federal government that they're setting up, now you're trying to get benefits from the slaves. So the slave looking at you like, how it is you trying to come in on me? Oh, you must not be what you say you are, because you basically using me to get off. Lack of respect is made, alliances are made between themselves, and then pretty much 250 years after that, they now giving you the same rituals you gave them to civilize them. So now they got you wearing the apron. They got you wearing the dress. You know what I'm saying? They got you rocking all of that. They got you doing, whatever, theater ritual to associate yourself, just because they don't want to tell you that they don't really know what they're doing. You understand? Anybody born after Albert Pike is doing and is in some sort of Freemasonic lodge in some way is doing an Albert Pike ritual. That's not because I say it. That's because that's how it was set up. Research him and Thornton Jackson and their relationship. So you got to do the aspect, you got to do the analysis stuff that is going on around you, and how a lot of these allegiances and these opposed adversaries wind up bleeding into the same ideology or person. Nazism back in the days of the Moors, who basically was taking over Kemet and all of that, was the Templars. You know what I'm saying? So, you also got to know which ancestors is yours and which ones ain't. Fourth gods is everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, this is where the whole thing is basically boiling down to and coming into being. It's the choices that we are making that are putting us in a position to either gain a higher understanding or lose it. But either way, it's our choice to do so. Because that is the only way that anything can move forward. If nobody made any choices, everything would basically just stop. Therefore, things happen in life and in our lives to specifically force us into doing shit sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And that's the universal appeal of everything. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So what I think we're gonna do is, what time is it? Great, 10:12. We get some calls. You know what I'm saying? Like, things wind up in situations where, you don't really know how it happened, and then you wind up in the shit and be like, damn, this is how it's going down. But that's how it is. So some people like the shows that's like mad fiery, where I just be going, I'll be real passionate, but I'm always passionate. You know what I'm saying? I'm always doing the knowledge to this type of stuff, but at the same time, I still have a life, or still strive to have a life too, where I'm actually happy about things. Because that's the part of this that's missing. People who's giving lectures and stuff like that, they ain't really talking about that. They're not really talking about, they focus so much on what you got to do and how critical it is and what's going to happen and how they're going to lock you up. They don't even talk to you about the power that you gain from enjoying yourself doing something, the power that you can create by creating something that maybe you put down. You know what I mean? Starting again. You have to have at least 30 minutes in the day that's just for you. If you don't, then your whole life is being devoted to something and somebody else. Therefore, you are a slave. And that's not a judgment or like, oh, you a slave. It's like, no, this is what you have created. You don't have nothing for you. When people talk to you, this is how you know somebody's under my control. When somebody say, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. I just came from work and blah, blah, blah. Like, I asked how you doing. I didn't ask about your job. I didn't ask about where you just came from. I said how you're doing is not about where you just came from. I'm talking about you as an individual. Or when you say, like, how do you feel about something, and then somebody go into a whole spiel about, like, what, oh, how could you ask me that, or, you know what I'm saying, go all around and shit. That's when there's a block there. There's something that they're not really dealing with because they putting you in a position to have to be the bad guy. When niggas in your life put you in a position to be the bad guy all the time, you got to get away from them people, man. Because those are people who really like you, but they want to find something wrong with you. So they're creating situations and acting more sensitive or personal than they really need to be in the moment. You know what I mean? Like if you got the type of friends when you call and ask them for a ride or some shit, these niggas, the first thing they do is start to talk to you about, gas money and shit like that. That's not your friend. That's a taxi. So you need to just call a taxi and save the drama from trying to satiate somebody else's opinion. You know what I mean? Because they really don't like you. Because your friends look out, man. You know what I mean? If you got the type of friends that's just always on some bullshit or always making you feel bad for how you feel or what you want to do, you have sidled up with a demon. You got to exercise that away from you because that's inhibiting your overall development. Like, there's no coincidence that a lot of these dudes got to get to certain degrees, and right before they blow up or do some shit, they lose a son or they lose a daughter. It always be before some sort of project, some sort of like major project or something, and that's not cool. So that should tell us something. You know what I mean? Yet the luxury of mind control is people believe in coincidence. So let's see. Let's get into a call. 681. Peace. Can you hear me?
Peace, dude. Peace. Peace. How's everything?
I'm good, fam. How you doing?
Doing good, man. I feel weird saying that after what you just said about when that question is asked.
Yeah, you know how it be, man. We all have our own answers,
Yes, sir. Can I ask you a question that's kind of off topic?
Of course.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. And everybody listening, this is something I'm going to do myself is put $3 at least towards this brother and sister's PayPal. Everybody listening, let's go on ahead and do it because y'all know we enjoy the show. We look forward to Moon Day based on this show, and I'm not the only one feeling that way. But, Duke, I got a question about like a progress chart. astrologically or astronomy or whatever it's called.
Right.
How do you interpret that? Because I know with my progressed chart, my sign has went to the next sign or whatever. How do you look at things like that for yourself? I just want to have that as kind of a basis or a foundation to think for myself with it, interpreting it. I know it's self-explanatory, but...
No, it's a good question. Any progressive chart is based upon, of course, the time of birth, the place and the date and all of that. But the correspondence values really will focus around, like, where your moon is at, what's in your 8th house, you know what I'm saying, and what's kind of like in how I do a lot of stuff. I don't know about other people, but I look at, like, what's in 8th. Like, if I wanted to know, like, what was wrong with you, or if there was going to be some sort of physical ailment, I would look at what is in the 8th house. Because the 8th house deals with death and regeneration. But that's also the Saturn number, 8. So there's then a correlation to the father as well. So I would look into, like, if there was, like, let's say you had Taurus in that degree, then I would say, okay, well, do you have anything wrong with your neck? You know what I mean? Have you ever had neck problems, tightness or whatever? If it was like Gemini, okay, do you have anything, or I would say Aries, have you ever had head injuries, things like that? Because based upon what the sign rules in the body, you can kind of deduce in the house what it is. You know what I'm saying? So if somebody has, for instance, I'll ask you, if you went and looked in a chart of somebody and looked in their 8th house and you saw that they had Leo at like 18 degrees, what would you ask them in terms of, let's say, a physical ailment? What would you think, or ask them if they ever had problems with?
If they had Leo in their 8th house?
Right.
I guess the heart?
Exactly. You see? You see what I'm saying? Okay. So you do the same thing with like, houses of, like, creativity and things like that. Like if they got, let's say, Virgo in I think the 9th house or whatever the house is of creativity, you would then say, okay, well, maybe they into something with beauty, fashion, or sculpting, or modeling, or, you know what I'm saying? Something, because Virgo is ruled by Venus. You know what I'm saying? Where if it was Libra, it might be something different. You know what I mean? They may have a respiratory issue because Libra deals with the what?
The lungs?
Right.
The scales?
Air.
Scales of the lungs. The air, okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Hey, Duke, with that sinkhole in Brooklyn, is that location of the sinkhole, is there any significance to that?
Well, yeah, sinkholes are basically like openings or portals where whatever was under that gave way, which means that there's something in the lower strata that is pulling the energy of the dirt or whatever and the sediment downwards. So this also is indicative of the 150-year period that they basically gave to building all the stuff they built. Most of the buildings they built, they used basically old masonry techniques to do so they last longer. But they was only to really last, that's why they need constant maintenance. You know what I'm saying? So buildings that was built in like 1860, they're going to be good a little while longer, but they're starting to fall down quicker. Also because the pollution in the air eats away at a lot of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? As well as their own malefic intent into building stuff. You know what I'm saying? In general, it kind of adds to the deterioration of the things that they built. You know what I mean? So, yeah, sinkholes are just like portals or black holes. So every time you think of see a sinkhole, think of a black hole, because that's essentially what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. What about where it's located in Brooklyn? Like, where is that in Brooklyn that it's located, and is there anything around it or any?
Well, now that they got Barclays to use their puppet Jay-Z to set up the whole Brooklyn thing, Nets with its own team, it's basically now like its own city. Like 10 years from now, Brooklyn's going to be like Oakland. It's like its own, and it always has been like that, but now it's really going to be up that. So what they want to do is gentrify and white out everything so that way it's only about money. You dig what I'm saying? They want to make it so that way people that's not making less than $5 million can live here. So essentially, what that is doing is that it's creating a negative effect based on all the history that we built up here. You know what I mean? As a people. So because Brooklyn was always its own thing anyway, remember we fought Civil War battles here, Revolutionary War battles here. I could show you mounds in Prospect Park, in Eastern Parkway itself. When you go up, coming up from the Flatbush side, going all the way up, you know what I mean, to where the Grand Army Plaza is, that's a central point. That was like a giant mound. And anywhere that we had significant mounds or influences, pyramids like that, is where they build their shit on top of. So when you look at the street and you're looking at all of the construction of the street, that's because they're trying to raise the street up again. Because the ground under it is now, again, not as sturdy as it was because the earth is going through its own changes and shaking these people out of here. So the more construction they do, the more they justify keeping things going. You see what I'm saying? But that's why they never finish nothing. By the time they finish it, they got to do something else. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, all of that is just really, in my view, of aspect of the symbolic nature of things that were once underground coming to light. You know what I'm saying? Things that were once dejected or thrown in the past now being brought up to the present for people to do the knowledge. I mean, they got to the point now they're trying to turn Snoop to a roster. You know what I'm saying? Like, they desperate. They don't really have nothing else. So now they're trying to flip people's perception. Remember, we grew up, who was the face of weed?
Bob Marley.
Exactly. See what I'm saying? I don't even have to say it. You already know. So now what? My children more grow up, you think the face of weed is Snoop Lion? Come on, man. And then it's whack because everybody think I look like this dude. So it'd be like the creator's little joke. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But again, all of these are signs to show you how desperate and how crazy these niggas is in the game. They'll do and say anything now. You know what I mean? Anything.
Hey, dude, how you dealing with jealousy? How you dealing with jealousy these days, man? Because I've been running into a whole lot of jealousy. Maybe my mind playing tricks on me, but I feel like I can sense when I'm talking to somebody, be it brother or sister, and they just got a little something extra or a little something less in their voice.
Yeah.
And the way that
really
things change when others are around too, and then on the one-on-one.
It's really not. It becomes jealousy, but initially it's intimidation. They're just severely intimidated by what it is you carrying with you. And this is not just me and you. This is everybody that's on some super Heru steeds, for real. Like, they just hating on you. That's just what they do. But the hate comes from the fact that they feel whatever it is you're doing, you really doing you. You know what I'm saying? Like, when people know that you say you're going to do something, that's probably, like, they know you're going to do that. So most people are not held accountable for nothing. Most people don't become held accountable for nothing until somebody forced the white man to come do it. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to pay child support. You know what I mean? Well, not child support per se, but cause that's different. That's like a forced, arbitrary thing. And even in that, the women don't get the money. So it's not even about support the child, really. But most black people don't really do shit to the white man tell them to. You know what I mean? And
definitely, man. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, please, brother.
I'm sorry, and I don't mean that like all black people just listen to what the thing I say, but a lot of black people are in a position where they don't really live for themselves. Like, you hear rappers and musicians talk about dying for you and all of that, but niggas would rather die than actually live to actually see something else. Niggas would rather join the army and start some sort of fomented revolution or something here. Niggas would rather join the police and set up their own police force or whatever to police their own communities, because that would mean then that they would have to go to work and then after work maybe come home, eat a little bit, then start a shift and then have to wake up and go to work and all of that. But niggas are doing that anyway. So if you could do it for the white man every day, how come you can't do it for your own community? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So you got to know it's not really you. It's just what you bringing out of these people. based upon your lack of participation in their insanity.
Exactly. Bear with them patiently, for they are insane.
Yeah.
Bear with them patiently. Dude, this is my last question. My wife got
like you have a functional literal.
You know
what I mean? You can have a functional insane person. That's what the movie American Psycho is about. And what was he? A banker, right?
Hey, dude.
While I'm talking to you right now, I'm in the backyard, and I've seen like 14 police cars just zoom by real quick. Like, what are 14 niggas gonna do to one? And it's only one dude, probably, or like two dudes. What are they doing? But again, all of that is to create agitation. But you know, the sinkhole needed to to open up. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be like, damn, why don't those shits ever open up like under a precinct or under like?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'd be like. That's exactly what I'd be like. Hey, but I know it's gonna happen though. Hey, that's just a warning. Matter of fact, how far was that from one of them precincts?
Yo, I told you
might
last
have been
week.
a secret one right in there. Might have been a secret police officer's neighborhood or house had somebody tied up in there, right close to it, letting them know. You know,
this banker who worked under these devils in City Hall through antitrust laws. The building he was walking by was a church. The steeple got struck by lightning, and the rocks came and killed the dude. And he just he was about to merge $1 million deal to break up somebody's company. So you know what I'm saying? Good work happening.
Good work happening.
Word.
Good work happening. Hey, dude. Yes, sir. I'm hopping off here. I got a question though, because you brought up something about the lungs, and it correlated with my wife. She's having an issue with her lungs right now a little bit with breathing. When she was younger, she had bronchitis. And I'm wondering what you tell people these days with respiratory type things going on.
You could get you some a glass of water, purified water, clean water. Put a cup of apple cider vinegar in it, a dash of cayenne pepper, a dash of organic maple syrup, or blackstrap molasses, a dash of olive oil, squeeze a lemon, stir that up, and drink that for like a week. See how she feel. Drink it like once a day.
Yes, sir. Copy. Thank you for that. Peace to everybody listening in the galaxies, and peace to your family from my family.
Peace, King. Thank you for calling, man.
Hey, thank you all. Peace.
Peace. Yeah, guys. That tonic that I just described is a very old one, and really works. I found that it works for respiratory stuff. So you could try it. Holler back at me and let me know how it works, or if it's working for you or not. Also, nowadays is the time when you got to take, your destiny into your hands. And as much as you do the knowledge of stuff, man, also use your common sense and listen to your body. Just because somebody is telling you that this will work for you don't necessarily mean. Like, sometimes you got to try it to see. So the things that I talk about or suggest with things like health like that, really, I have learned through what we learned from the Empress and Kweke, blessed dead, as well as, my wife, who's really, really good at that. But like the brother said, I've been in situations with sisters, have been with my queen, and have gone through things and really need help, and she's really offered to do it. But it's like he said, it's something in them that's just like, nah, I'd rather, you know what I mean? Maybe it's they don't want to see her. I don't know what it is. But whatever it is, it's something that women got to get over. Like, niggas say what they want, but I know that women don't like women. A lot of black women hate on each other, man, and I see this shit every day. And I notice that a lot of the women who get hated on are the most beautiful and blackest. I don't know. And unfortunately, a lot of that becomes a part of both of us. So we have to look within ourselves to kind of push past that useless trait that we have found in our community and kind of like keep it real with each other, man. Okay. (859) You want Super Heru Radio?
Aseer.
Peace.
Yo, it's Metatrons.
What's up, King? How you doing, man?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm good, fam. Good to hear from you.
Oh, good. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what brother's comment about the whole PayPal thing. Your family's doing a lot of beautiful work, and we should be able to pitch out $2 or $3 and send it. You said you got 2,000 plus people listening in, so that would be more than superfluous.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate that, man.
No problem, brother.
For
you
real.
got the time to get into psychic vampires, man. About people who feed on your energy.
Yeah, we can get into that.
Yeah, because my pops just died Saturday, and it seems like ever since that, I got a lot of family members coming over who don't even really like me, who I don't talk to, and it's like, you got unwarranted members of your family who come over to your house, and it's just a really bad negative vibe that they bring, and you can still feel it when they leave the house.
Yes. Yes, I know people like that very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is because of the thought forms.
Mm-hmm.
The negative thought forms that associate and accompany people are just as powerful as, like, a smell that somebody would have. So the same way a person could wear, like, too much cologne to the point of make you cough, the same way a person could come in your presence and you just feel stifled or stymied or whatever. But whatever it is, it's an aspect that you have to push through to realize that individual is feeding on you. There are two types of feeders, predominant traditionally, and that's usually the incubus and the succubus. So the incubus was usually the male who goes through situations where he tends to act very emotional like a female. You know what I mean? Or the guy who's your friend who takes offense to, like, the littlest thing you say all the time and shit, but then, like, is there sometimes when you need him. Don't be there all the time, but be there sometimes or enough that you feel like he's around. But all of what I just talked about was really you and I thinking and making justifications for this person's obvious lack of compassion. But because compassion is an aphrodisiac to the sadists, they tend to focus on the energy to be able to suck it in. So in the form of an incubus being a male with a woman, he would basically be in instances where he takes his penis through sex, where these are like the guys who he'll be real romantic with the girl and all of that, and then, like, once the girl decides to be with him, he, like, starts to beat her and go crazy and shit, or, like, this is whack, starts cheating on her. These are handlers, but these are also incubuses who are now through sex. Huh? I don't know. I thought he came in the house. Aquarius, they just speak. You know? So
is
all
that
of
like going back to what you said with the whole thing with the Penn State dude, how the entity traveling through his seminal fluid during the whole ritualistic rape?
Yes. Okay. Which is a form of creating magic moon children.
Right.
And then in the form of the incubus with the male, he's like the friend I was talking about, or like the parent who's like mad stern, like at times for like no reason, just mad extreme and shit, and then doesn't really want to cop to anything that was done, like it's all you. And those are the emotional vampires, because their misery, they're making you miserable because they was always jealous of the fact that you was able to bypass some of the mistakes that they made in your youth. Mm-hmm. We underestimate that our parents, just because they're our parents, they're supposed to love us, doesn't mean that they do. So in the form of, let's say, a traditional incubus like that, you're dealing with, that's a form of vampirism. In the form of also incubuses are dudes who be secretly in love with you and don't really know how to, like, deal with it. So, like, they got to make you their enemy. Kind of like when a girl, if you ever had a girl interested in you, but because you're faithful to your girl, she almost got to find something about you that she don't like. And then,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Because they almost got to trick themselves out of their feelings. You know what I'm saying? So men do the same thing. You know what I mean? But because we're men, we don't want to equate that they are going to, you know, be like that with us. But that happens. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes the friendships that you lose be because of dumb shit just like that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, that's another form of incubusism. Then the succubus is the female who, like, in the sex with the incubus with a woman, the tip of the penis is almost turned into the vagina, which would turn the vagina into the penis. And so he's now sucking the energy out of her. Whereas the succubus does the opposite. She sucks the energy out, the life force out of the man. This is the psychotic baby mama syndrome. These are the chicks that once they have the baby, they just go crazy. And then all of a sudden, the mother who was mad cool with you and shit just turn against you, and then like you're the worst person in the world, and then she called a white man. All of that, those are all of those women. Like, I understand.
And in like a lot of these cases, like most people, they don't realize they have this ability, right?
Yeah, they don't deal with the woman's obvious insanity. They don't require the 730 evaluation for the woman because she's bringing the case. So technically, if she's bringing the case, then it's assumed that she's sane. You know what I'm saying? But this is coming from a satanic system that is insane. So of course, you now, who is the sane one, have to be put through the ritual. You see what I'm saying? Because she now is joining up with them to punish you. It's not even about the money, because they never get the money. The baby moms who take niggas for the court and all of that, they don't really get the money like that.
They just throw it off the system.
Yeah, the system breaks them off. So when these chicks act like, you know, they doing whatever, you have women that are being bred now who are growing up to only become strippers so they can have meet a rapper and then have his baby and then be taken care of financially. You have women who are being bred to grow up to look at men like a paycheck and their babies like that. This is a form of dissociative identity disorder that the Surgeon General has even come out that I would go far as to say is really the root of it all is the damn perm. I'm really starting to think that it's the damn perm, that is the perm that is eating away at the upper part of the skull being the original crystal ball made of quartz that allows the brain protection, and the film that begins to seep into the mind, the lie, the acid, begins to obscure the thought of the woman. Because according to them, like I was saying on the show years ago, because this is a phenomenon that's specifically targeted to black women and perpetuated by black women, it's very interesting that the white man now will come out and say the opposite. Because when you see the white man, he's with the system without the perm, without the lie and all of that. That's what he wants. But the women who are chasing him now are the ones with the perm and all that. So they still not getting really what they want. You dig what I'm saying? It's bugging them out.
Yeah,
now,
they did the autopsies too. And they find out like the green substance in the black women's brains.
Yes, in the brain. So that is a demon that has been perpetuated from the days of Madam C.J. Walker, who was a madam who provided prostitutes for some of the black elite from the Round Table clubs to take, during the Harlem Renaissance, to take energy away from what Marcus Garvey was doing with the UNIA movement.
Oh.
So we're talking about a planned agenda by which she was like the first Oprah. You know what I mean? So in the process of this now, they have created this thing. I'm deducing to the point where maybe that's what it is, because now they're trying to, based on this now, they're talking about creating laws, black women, to put you in jail if you put a perm in your baby's head beyond a certain age. This is how deep this white man is going with trying to force you into understanding what your culture really is about. So you get mad at me and you all you want, but in the end, this is what's really going down. This nigga is coming out and now saying that this perm is driving you crazy because when you got it, you don't sleep, which is causing neck problems. You don't really rest, so you have insomnia, narcolepsy, right? Then you don't really exercise because you don't want to sweat it out, so it'll stink. So you become obese. You don't really move around like that, which is sloth, which is a sin, right? Then they're saying you don't get wet, You don't get in the water. Your head is supposed to be wet sometimes. You understand what I'm saying? Like, how you going to, like, your head is supposed to be wet. It'd be ill when we be on the beach in Miami and I'd be seeing chicks with straight up lace front, up to the water, up to, like, their eyes, hoping that the waves don't go over. That's fired up. But
and, like, even over a period
head,
of generations.
Yeah, Doc. And
you line up your genetics, and so your seeds are going to be like, their hair is going to just...
Yes. And when my queen, and not my queen, when I remember when my younger cousin got her first perm, all her hair fell out. And this was a natural thing. You know what I mean? This happens sometime, and that's traumatic for a little girl.
Yeah.
So why would you force it? I know women that's splitting, they're ban that in weaves. They're trying to ban putting things in weaves because what they're not telling people is that some of the hair stuff that they be selling don't be processed correctly, so lice be in the shit. And then these women be getting this sewn in their head, and then the lice be starting to eat in their head and all that, and because they too proud to really go in and find out that they got lice, the shit get worse. So, again, this is how they used to do with the cocaine, when they used to leave the worms in the cocaine to kill the buyers and the users during the 80s and the 90s and shit. You know? So, again, this is, an aspect of mind control that was left over from this MJ-12 period because they knew that the woman would be susceptible to certain aspects more than the male.
Mm-hmm.
But now what has happened is that through this incubus and this sub-satanic program, and the males are acting now like females, and the females are acting more like males. So now you got the males getting perms and doing all of this now too, which is then doing the same thing to them, which is breeding insanity, not to mention whatever trauma was come from the molestation as a child, not to mention whatever, you see what I'm saying? Like all of this shit is compounded, man. But they'll get mad at you or me as black men if we say, you know, we prefer sisters that don't have that. Not that a sister that doesn't have that is not beautiful, but it's to say that you have to graduate sister to the point that you realize you don't have to do that. If your hair's not like that naturally, then I want to see you. You can't expect a man to be truthful to you when your hair's not real, your nails are not real.
You're not truthful to yourself.
Your eyes is not real. None of that's real. And then the man pays for that, because then when the man lets himself wake up out of the illusion as to who you really are, he's out. He's out. So all you can do then is use the baby, and then the baby then becomes the battlefield, and then the white man now come in and lock everybody down. And black man, ain't no black man purposely going to court if he don't have to. So you can't put that on us. You know what I mean?
For real.
Put that like we bringing chicks to court. We ain't doing that. Black men try to stay away.
Don't want to see no courtroom.
No, we don't do that. We don't want to do that. We don't do that. So there has to be something in them that comes to that understanding. So the psychic vampire thing, G, is basically just that. These are all symptoms of it. You dig what I'm saying? So if you're a conscious individual and you hook up with a sister or a perm, or you're a sister with your natural hair and you hook up with a dude who's always getting his hair. One thing, too, when you go to barbershops and stuff to get your hair cut, man, try to get your hair. Try to have like a little thing under. Ask the barber to put a little thing under so you can take your hair with you, man. Don't have your hair anymore being lumped up with other people's shit and thrown in the garbage. Like, that's not cool.
Yeah, what's up with that? Cause my cousin, you know,
don't do that.
He's been riffing on like a lot of his barbers, and I know you're not supposed to let nobody who you're having problems with near your crown like that.
Yeah, don't let nobody that cut your hair either. Word. Same thing with women. Don't let no bitch that you know don't like you do your hair, man.
Yeah.
She'll put that energy in your head to let your hair fall out, and then you're gonna have to have a perm. I mean, you're gonna have to have a natural hair. You know what I'm saying? But
food also. Yeah, having somebody prepare your food who you just got into it with.
Don't let them prepare your food.
Oh Lord.
Don't hold their secrets. Stop holding niggas' secrets that has nothing to do with you. Like somebody starts to tell you something about somebody else that's not necessarily thing, and you ain't asked. You're like, nah, I don't even want to take this, because now you a part of it. You gotta hold that. That's how also they get people in order. Look what happened in Rosewood when the niggas kept the secret. So essentially, you got to do that. Also with the hair thing, when you get the haircut or whatever, get all your hair, and then if you want, take it to the toilet, flush it down the toilet. It's better flush it down the toilet. It's like a condom. You don't want to put a condom in the garbage.
Oh, yeah, you
that
said something, too, with the masturbation and how the spirit can jump into the seminal fluid. Say
that again?
Yeah, a few shows back you was talking about how if you ejaculate, you should probably watch whatever article just due to the chance that malignant entity could jump into that life fluid. Right.
What you
so it'd be the same thing with the hair and the flushing.
Yeah, it's the same
on the
thing.
toilet. Yeah.
Like in cases of like sex with like your woman or something, you know, somebody that you're in love with, you know what I mean? It's one thing, you know what I mean? Because let's say if you practice like the rhythm method and you're pulling out, you know, all of that, there's still going to be entities and stuff around that, but it's going to be entities based on love because you love this woman. See what I'm saying? If it's some chick that you just slutting out, you know what I'm saying, then you got to make sure that if that happens, that's why you got to keep it in the condom, tie the knot in it, and throw it down the toilet. Because they'll come and suck it up, and then based upon her, whatever issue, because like you don't really know her, or you're not really trying to know her, so you're just using her as like a altar to propel yourself into, you know what I'm saying, into bliss, or she's using you for that. So either way, whatever's done has to be done away with the proper way. You can't put seminal fluid and hair and stuff in the garbage. You got to flush that or burn it.
One more thing, I don't want to keep the line busy too long, but you was mentioning Jack Parsons earlier.
Yeah.
And I was reading over some of Operation High Jump with the Nazis moved to Operation Antarctica.
The Nazis in Antarctica.
Yeah, and so what the whole goal was to penetrate the Hollow Earth?
Yeah, it was to get in there and set up individual bases or make a treaty with them so they could have a long-term base in Antarctica in a traditional sense. But they couldn't do it. And the Nazis had beat them to it. So they had already initiated whatever protocols they wanted to. There's a movie coming out called Nazis Nazis from the Inner Earth, or something like that. And it's all about that coming out. And they get into that. But yeah, also Antarctica, after this ice age goes through, is going to be like the new Eden and stuff. So they trying to set themselves up in there. Antarctica and Siberia is about to get thawed out. So everything that's been locked in the ice under there for that long is about to be. But that's technically under the jurisdiction of the people the people who guard the hole into the inner earth. You know what I'm saying? So they can't really deal with that. So when the United States builds DUMBs, which is underground military bases, they only are really in the upper mantle of stuff. They're not real deep. They can't go too deep.
Because I know for a while they had like sent probes in, but you know they kept destroying them and shooting them back out.
Well, the first time was during the I think the 40s or something. There was some miners that were working for Standard Oil or whatever. Was it Standard Oil? It was either Standard Oil or De Beers, the diamond company, or whatever. And these dudes was mining and broke into a chamber, and it was mad, like, glowing green and shit. And it was like, they said it went on forever. And it was just like ill vegetation and all of that. So right after that, they told the Army, and the Army came and shut it down. So after that point is when they started really getting heavy into that, because this was also the whole nuclear threat thing. So they used that as a justification to start to dig these huge underground military bases and stuff. But most of them have been decommissioned. So, like I said, there's websites where you can go on and purchase them. You know what I mean? Like you could purchase one for like $15 million.
Oh.
You know what I mean? They decommission them, so they up for grabs. That's what I'm trying to say. This is what happens when you let a federal government run the country. They sell everything. Everything is a fire sale now. Everything in the country is literally for sale. Me, you, to them. You know what I'm saying? Me, you, everything. So they're doing that in hopes that they can make enough money to keep the ritual going to then, you know, get off the planet. But that's not going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully, man, I'll keep in contact with you and see if I want to find out about this, the whole significance of, you know, the Olympics being hosted back in the financial system of this world order in London again. And, how Zion is incorporated with the whole 2012 scenario
Oh, yeah,
and
man.
yeah,
man. Definitely. Actually, the class we're going to talk about deals with some of those aspects. So one we want to start hopefully this Wednesday.
Okay.
Online. So just holler at me through the email, houseofl@hotmail.com, and I'll send you an invite, flyer, whatever, to the class.
Killer. All right, man, I appreciate talking to you. I'm going to hit you up about that brick dust, too. I know I mentioned something to you about 4 or 5 months ago. So
I appreciate the support, man.
Okay. Hey, much obliged.
Peace, fam. Be safe.
Peace.
All right. I think we have room for one more. Again, thank you, everybody, for going to www.darkskull418.com and picking up copies of the Dark Skull 418 hard copy. We're going to get the e-book at the end of the month. So you'll be able to order that for your Kindle, your Nook, and all of that. It'll be online in all the online stores where you can order. Check it out. Thank you for that, as well as the future Dark Skull 418 events and appearances coming up soon. So thank you for that. Again, it's www.darkskull418. The book is called The Dark Skull 418, the world's most dangerous comic book novel. It's 575 pages of rawness. And I illustrated all the characters and stuff myself, so check it out. Also, for those people who may think it's too deep, don't worry. I created a glossary for some of the terminology in the book that's in the back of the book. So you could do the knowledge to it yourself and know, oh, okay, this is whatever it means, you know. So we get into one more call. (253) on Super Heru Radio.
Peace, Aseer. Peace.
Peace.
I got a question for you. Where did the whole concept of the Galactic Federation come from?
That's a great question, bro. That's a great question. The research I did on it said that it was basically started by, or was initially founded by, that guy Jacques Fresco, where it was a concept that he had basically heard from some of his other contemporaries of the time, who were quoted as quote-unquote futurists. So as a futurist concept, they extrapolated on the point of how a galactic federation would concur. So you'll see a lot of Caucasian people always refer to themselves as Pleiadians.
Right.
And you know, the Ashtar fleet and all of that.
Right.
So all of this is really stuff that they gleaned out of an ancient text of our ancestors called the Ramayana.
Uh-huh. And
the Ramayana basically dealt with the wars that led to the nuclear wars of Kemet and eventually the flood of the old world and the splitting of the continents and Atlantis and all that stuff. So they basically extrapolated the aspect of that there was a fleet of people that were already on their way here to help reconquest everything and put everything right, but didn't get here yet. So the avatars or the ascendant masters that they projected themselves through always, for some reason, happen to be Caucasian people. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I've noticed that. None of them never black.
Yeah. Right. That's because, again, you know, you never see no black people. I mean, E.T. was black, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know what I mean? They don't really, you know, black people don't really deal with the whole alien contact thing because black people are the aliens. You know what I mean? So, really what we're talking about, nobody that's saying that they from the Pleiades is really from there. The Pleiades system, like I said on a couple of shows back, it's so young that it has not brought about physical life yet. You know what I'm saying? It's a solar system that's not even supporting what we would consider sentient life. So how could you be from a place, you know what I'm saying, that don't even have the ability to support you as a living organism yet?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Also, Pleiades is the system with the 7 stars. The myth of the 7 sisters is the Greek myth of the 7 sisters, or the Etruscan myth of the 7 sisters, is the allegory into how we would astrally travel back and forth through the Pleiades as a jump point through those 7 suns that represent the 7 chakras of that system. So these people who are talking about the Galactic Federation stuff, they're basically people who are picking up on ionospheric conversations that may be existing from our ancestors in that realm, right, who are non-physical, or just plain government agents mind control to believe that they're from a place that's too young to support any type of life at this point.
Okay,
so most of those Galactic Federation emails and stuff that they be sending out is stuff, some of that stuff, all of it's propaganda, but there's aspects of it that's true. And when you read it, you'll know what points to it, what's not, for honing yourself up to know, even if you want to waste time checking that stuff out. But there are aspects of it sometimes that be on. Yeah, some of it be true. It's like People Magazine. People don't know that People Magazine is the biggest monarch mind control magazine that basically triggers and lets the mass medias or the people out there know what trends are going to be the ones that are going to be used in whatever operation they're doing. So it's the same thing with that stuff. You know what I mean? Like anything. The whole zeitgeist thing, all of that stuff is government funded. So whatever these people who are coming into it now think it is, we already knew what it was because we was on this from back in the day. So, take the good stuff out of it, leave the bad stuff.
Right, yeah. It's certain ones I read and I go over it, and and I'm like, there's so much bullshit right here. And then I look at the author of it.
Bullshit.
Like, okay,
right.
That's just this guy. He's full of crap right here.
You're right, but there's some of it sometimes they'll have like a thread of truth in it. That's the part, and that be why you read it. I mean, you just chuck all the rest of the crap. But any white man or white woman telling you that they're alien or a channeler or they manifest Ramphel or whatever, these are all people who are disassociated, disordered mind control people through monarch programming who are basically have some sort of affiliation to some type of Black Ops MJ-12, some type of stuff that is going through it. You know what I mean? Just the fact that it's always Caucasian people let you know that there's something wrong with it.
When I go to some of these websites and I ask them like a specific question, now since I've learned the significance of melanin, I'll ask like the moderator of the thread, like, well, what's the importance of melanin, around your whole website or whatever. And, they'll tell me it's not big significance, so therefore I leave the site alone and I never go back to it.
Exactly. See, they're telling you that it's not significant to them because they're not talking to you. They're talking to other white people who want to believe that they're alien and that they better than you. It's just more bullshit.
Yeah, so that's the way I got my filter to that. But I appreciate the information, man. Take to you and your family.
Thank you, King. Be safe.
You too.
So, anybody interested in the classes that we got coming up, I will send you the flyer that basically entails what the classes are about. Inshallah, we'll start them this Wednesday when we touch back down in Miami. We want to give thanks to all the ancestors, the ancient ancestors of New York, New Amsterdam, Old York. You know what I'm saying? I really appreciate the time we was here. I'm glad I was born here. Big up Brooklyn, you know what I'm saying? I'm always a Brooklynite, and love and light to everybody else. You can email me again for the classes at houseofl@hotmail.com, www.thedarkscope418.com to get copies of The Dark Scope 418, the world's most dangerous comic book novel, as well as www.aseertheducateers.com, as well as www.blackmambaworkouts.com, as well as www.cookingmorewithless.com. It's right next to you. Thank you, Selena, for holding me down. Thank you for always being a great woman and being the only person I could do this with. And thank you, my brothers and sisters, for always supporting us and coming through. Thank you for the donations. They greatly needed. We always can use them. I'll let you know when we got to the point where we don't. But until then, the more the merrier, because it's literally, like I said, just us. So those people who have made orders or whatever, we're going to get you up this week. I'm touching down tomorrow, inshallah. Thank you again, for supporting us in our time here in New York at all the events that we've done. Thank you, Cornerstone. Thank you, everybody, for participating. So, inshallah, we'll speak to you again next Monday night. Say peace, love, and light. Love to you, Super Heru. Peace.